Hey, everybody, it's Becky Drozdz. Thank you so much for tuning into the Guerrilla HR Podcast. So, what is going on in the world? I am already getting questions from people about what is happening with cost of living adjustments for 2026. Now, keep in mind, cost of living is different than cost of labor. So, Social Security determines the cost of living or the COLA adjustment. They have announced that for next year it's going to be 2.8%. So, we'll see a 2.8% increase in Social Security benefits that will start in January of 2026. Now, when it comes to cost of labor, what we're seeing in the data is anywhere between 3.5% and 4% is what employers are looking at as far as increases towards their salaries and wages. So, two different numbers, but definitely something to keep in mind because I know some of my folks out there do look at Social Security COLA when making some decisions around labor as well. But two different numbers. Don't forget that. Today's guest is Michael Bach. He is an expert in the areas of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. When I look at his background, really the only way I can describe him is a badass in this world of idea, or again, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. He has really dedicated his career to making these workplaces that are inclusive. He is the founder of the Canadian Center for Diversity and Inclusion, and he has also been in a variety of different leadership roles in different organizations. So without further ado, let's welcome Michael. All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, you have such a broad background in the areas of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And I loved that when I looked at your profile and your books and all of the different things that you have out there. And so, one of the things that I think we're feeling, and I know you're in Canada, but I think especially here in the US, is that there are so many misconceptions around idea in general. So inclusion,
Sure.
diversity, equity, and accessibility. There's so many things that people just have wrong about it. So talk to us a little bit about that.
You know what? Wrong. I'm going to hesitate on the word wrong.
Okay.
I would say that there has been an approach that has been taken for many years by some, sometimes referred as to this as sometimes referred to as the social justice approach, or the
Mhm.
kind of moral imperative. It's the right thing to do, and I think that has not been an effective way of doing this work. I've been in this space now for 20 years, and I come from that background. Historically, I am the social justice warrior fighting the good fight, stick it
Mhm.
to the man, and that didn't work. And it's not going to work
Mhm.
because it requires said person to give up power, and that's just not going to happen naturally.
Yeah.
So I have always approached this work from the perspective of what's the problem we're trying to solve?
Mhm.
What's the issue that the employer is facing? And let's then leverage idea, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility to the advantage of the employer. That gets where we want to get from a social justice perspective, but it does it in a way that is lasting and the change becomes sticky, as
Mhm.
opposed to, I once heard the CEO of a bank stand up and say, it's the right thing to do. And I thought, is it? What's getting you out of bed every morning? How are
Yeah.
you being judged as a CEO of a major bank? It's not by doing the right thing. It's by putting money in the pocket of your shareholders. Idea can help you do that
Mhm.
because it gives
It's
you
just
access.
the packaging as a with the business justification versus the moral justification.
Exactly. That is
Yeah.
exactly it. And I think that moral justification has frankly gotten us to where we are today.
Yeah, which, especially here in the US is not in a good spot.
No, and I confess I actually live in the US now.
Okay,
I'm
okay, I wasn't sure. I thought it
ducking
was
cover
Canada, and
from
I was gonna ask you all these questions about, like, what does Canada think about all this woke thing, in the US, but now I know you're not even
I am not there.
there.
I jokingly say I'm there virtually because I still work in Canada, but I live in Southern California because I don't like being cold. And
I totally understand that.
yes, my
Yeah.
ancestors picked the wrong one.
Yeah, that's how I ended up in South Carolina because I used to live in Illinois, and, there are a lot of
Oh
things
yeah.
about Illinois I think are pretty darn fantastic,
Yeah.
compared to South Carolina, but not the winters.
Yeah, except for -20. No.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we've totally gone off topic here. Let's go back.
Fabulous.
So,
Yeah.
thinking about idea and the business case for why that's what we need to do. I think you
Yep.
started to touch on it when you mentioned like a bank CEO and what are they being measured on. So, how can organizations figure out their business case? How can they collect their data? What should that data be to help say, this is why we need to do it?
I would look at what you are doing as an organization. So what are your strategic priorities? What's your focus? And the one we always come to, particularly from an HR perspective, is talent
Hmm.
and talent attraction, talent management. We are all still in the people business until our robot overlords tire of us. And it's about who you hire, who you fire, who you promote, who you
Hmm.
retain, not necessarily in that order.
Hmm.
And if you look at it from a talent perspective solely, and I'm not saying you should, I'll come to that in a second, but from a talent perspective, a focus on idea increases your pool of talent. There was a recent study that showed that 2 out of 5 employees would quit their job if their employer backed away from their idea commitments. 75% of employees, and this is just from 2025, this study came out, 75% of employees would stay in the company because of their commitment to idea. So it positively impacts recruitment, it positively impacts retention. There's employee engagement, all of these aspects. So look at all of those things
Hmm.
and apply an idea lens to it. Then we come to the next pillar, and that is your customer. And everybody has a customer in some way, shape, or form, depending on
Hmm.
what you call it, a guest, a resident. The customer of a school is the student. The customer of a city is the resident of the city. So you need to understand your customers. And a focus on idea is about ensuring that you are giving your customers what you need and opening up potential new markets depending on what you do as an organization. So my point is to say, look at everything you do and
Hmm.
apply an idea lens to it. Idea sort of as a bubble over on the side, it doesn't necessarily work because then it becomes social justice. It
Hmm.
becomes that corporate social responsibility, corporate citizenship, ESG. This is
Yep. Yep.
core business stuff. This is not the nice to have. This is
Hmm.
about how, look at talent attraction as an example and talent retention. The studies show that it costs somewhere between 50 and 300% of a person's salary to replace a person when they leave an organization, not to mention
Hmm.
the impact on downtime and retraining and whatnot. So that is a cost. And these are costs that you can avoid and mitigate by making sure that your workplace is one that is inclusive and equitable.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of bringing idea to the perspective of talent. I think about it as a consumer, certainly. There are places that I will and won't spend my dollars because
Absolutely.
of some of these things. And I think that certainly flows down when you think about, well, how are they treating their employees and what's the value of their employees? So it makes sense to look at that from that same perspective of if you're looking for a job or you're looking at the talent you have in your organization, where do they align with idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And people do make decisions based on that criteria. It's not just about how I feel as a customer going into a store. It's
Hmm.
also what do I know about you as an employer?
Hmm.
And I can tell you there are absolutely some places that I do not shop because it is well known that they are not a great employer.
Yes. Yes. I agree on so many different ways with that and all those different levels. But yeah, I totally agree. That makes perfect sense.
We
So
could make a
what
list.
yes, I know. What do you think an employer needs to do if they don't really have anything in place? Or let's say they've shied away because they thought that that's what they needed to do and they're recognizing that, you know what, from a business standpoint, idea makes sense and it helps us drive profitability. It helps us reach the customers that we want. It helps us retain the talent that we want. What can an organization do if they've backed off from that? Or they haven't really gotten to a point where, maybe they're newer as an organization and they just haven't reached that level of maturity. Where do they start?
They start at the very beginning, the very best place to start. You start at, I'm gay, I'm allowed to quote a musical. You start with the business case. And I've been saying this for 20 years. You need to have a rock solid business case that just answers the why question, not the what, not the how, the why. Why does this matter to your organization? You have to use specific data that tells the story of how a focus on inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility can positively impact your organization, either through saving you money or access to markets or whatever the motivator is. And that business case can be 2 pages, 3 pages at most, but really needs to speak the language of your organization. I can write it for you. I've written hundreds of business cases in my life, but it has to speak to your organization and very, very specifically what is going to matter to your organization. That becomes your North Star. That becomes the thing that you look to time and time again and say, why are we doing this again? Oh, right, here it is. And the number one thing people need to do is ignore the noise from the outside. This nonsense about anti-wokeness and I mean, I could go on that for a very long time, but focus on what matters for your business and ignore the noise. Don't do this because you think it's the right thing to do. Do it because it's the right thing to do for your business. Whatever your business is, nonprofit, for-profit, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. I think so. In my work, my focus is really in total rewards and compensation. That's in my consulting business. That is where my focus is. And so I think about that same thing that you just said with kind of the philosophy statement and let that be your guide. So often I have that from a compensation philosophy or a total rewards philosophy. And I have so many clients that are like, oh, I don't really know. I'm like, well, at a minimum, let's say that we want to pay fairly and be compliant. Like start there, but then figure out who do you want to be. And it's kind of funny. I just recently had a client that's getting pushback about some planning, for salaries and all this coming into this next year. And I said, what does your philosophy say? We spent a lot of time developing that. Take that back to your other leaders and your financial people to say, this is who we've said we are, and this is why we need the funds to support that. So I think it's that same thing of know who you want to be and then live up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to believe that value statements or credos are enough. They're not.
No.
That's just the truth, because people are motivated by one thing, and that is money. And say what you will about that. That's just the world we live in. So that being the case, focus on the dollars. You talk about total rewards and compensation. Let's talk about why it's a problem from a community perspective, from an economy perspective, that women are not paid the same rate as men. Women make on average 76 cents on the dollar compared to men doing the same or similar job. I think that's the number. It changes.
84 is the latest.
84 is the latest. I apologize. Thank you for correcting me. So
we made huge gains up to 84 cents.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's climbing a mountain there.
Yeah.
Why is that a problem though? It's a problem because women are less engaged in their work because they know they're being paid less. They're less creative. They're less innovative. They're less willing to contribute to the organization. They are far more likely to leave the organization. There's a cost to that. It also means they don't have as much discretionary spending. They're not paying as much tax, et cetera, et cetera. There are real reasons why that is bad for the economy, bad for our communities, and why companies will benefit from paying their women employees, their female employees, the same comparable to men.
Yes.
That's how you connect the dots.
Yes. Yes, that I agree. I could talk about that all day long.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there's so many reasons and so many things that you lose out when you don't think about that. So, and for
Yeah.
me, that kind of falls into the equity piece of this. And so I also think then about just the larger issue of a wage gap and the wealth getting wealthier and your entry level and lower income earners, which now I'm going to say is anything under 60,000, and that gap just grows and
Yeah.
grows where you have people that like they can't afford to live. So when I think about idea, and again back to who you want to be, it is, do we want to perpetuate that gap where those lower level people, they're creating the consumer experience. If it's retail or if it's hospitality, it's those earners that aren't making the much, but they're creating the experience when I go in, and they are creating
Mhm.
all of this value for a CEO or a shareholder. And it's, to me, it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. It is the dumbest business decision I can think of to try to make more money on the backs of the individuals who are there to make money for you.
Yes.
It's a stupid decision.
Yes.
There are the amount of money that companies waste, and I'm talking about for-profit companies now,
Hmm.
the amount that they waste on stupid things is epic. Like we're talking
Hmm.
the GDP of a small country.
Yeah.
When you consider that, let's talk fast food as an example. You go into a restaurant. These people are barely making ends meet.
Hmm.
They are being paid minimum wage, which is woefully low and below the poverty line.
Yep.
They're the people that are selling your product. They're
Yep.
the people that are going to try to upsell, that are going to look for savings. They're going to make sure that there's no food waste. It is a dumb decision to try to make more money based on them. It just is asinine, politely.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah, I don't know how to change some of that. And again, being in the comp world, it's
Mm.
coming back again to that business justification of saying if you treat people in a way where they are able to sustain their life, well, then they're representing your organization in a way that's going to drive more business. They are creating an experience where somebody says, "Oh, you know what? Sure, I will take that cookie too," or whatever the upsell, whatever the thing is. So yeah, I don't. I get so frustrated that we're kind of stuck where we are, and I don't know how to make that needle move other than having these conversations and say, look at
Right.
your
I mean,
business, look at the harm you're doing to your business by shortchanging those people.
yeah, I think what I would say is you're doing your part. You're out there. You're sending this message. Imagine if one CEO listens to this podcast and hears that message and thinks, "Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That
Yeah.
I'm trying to make money off the backs of the people who are there to make money for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to change my approach." And they do. Wow, what an incredible impact that has.
Yeah.
It's the old adage of how do you eat an elephant?
Yep.
One
One
bite
bite
at
at
a
a
time.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
I
I
call it
saw
the
this.
incremental revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw this meme yesterday. Speaking of the wage
Mm.
gap, particularly related to gender, although it's worse if you add in anything else.
Oh, yeah.
And it said during the shutdown and all these furloughs, in addition to the layoffs, he's like, "Yeah, men and women are really hurting, but just think about it. For every 84 cents that a woman is losing, as a man, I'm losing a whole dollar." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" It it made me laugh, but it was still so sad. Yeah,
Oh, bless the
crazy.
internet.
I know, I know. This is how I fill my time. Otherwise, I would just sit here and be mad about it. So,
Oh, yeah.
okay, for other people who want to do more things, I know that you also
Yeah.
have several books out there. Talk to us a little bit about. I know
Do.
you've got Birds of All Feathers and Alphabet
Yes.
Soup. Tell our
Yes.
listeners a little bit more about your books and what they might find in those.
Sure. So, Birds of All Feathers Doing Diversity and Inclusion Right is a politely how to guide of how to do diversity and inclusion right. I wrote this in 2019. It was released in 2020. And I wrote it because I got tired of answering the same questions over and over.
Mhm.
And I wanted something that I could just hand to a client and say, here, read this, catch up. And frankly, a lot of it is for small to medium size enterprise, small companies that can't afford me or you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, here are all the secrets. This shouldn't be rocket science.
Yeah.
My second book, Alphabet Soup, The Essential Guide to LGBTQ2 plus Inclusion at Work, obviously is about sexuality and gender. More of a personal book there. I mean, it's still about how do you create inclusive spaces for members of the LGBTQ plus communities. But obviously, as a person who is gay, as a person who's gender nonconforming, that was much more of a story to me about
Mm-hmm.
creating a better world for members of my community.
Mm-hmm.
I have the advantage that I'm white and I'm cis presenting, so I live a pretty charmed life. But there are members of the queer communities that are not living a
Yeah.
charmed life.
Yeah.
The trans community in the United States right now is under attack,
Yes.
and so I wanted to write something that again would help employers create more inclusive spaces for members of the queer community.
Yeah, I think those are both fantastic resources and books that everybody needs to get. So I need to just get a bunch of copies and sprinkle them like glitter for everybody to pick up and read. Or,
Absolutely.
that can be my
Absolutely.
like my thank you to my clients. Here's some additional reading for you.
Yeah, they're very practical. They're very like, here's it. One thing I hate about books written by consultants is it's like, I'm going to tell you the problem, and to get the answer, you need to hire me.
Right, right.
No, that's not fair. That's like, going all the way through Harry Potter and not finding it. Well, not Harry Potter now, but you know what I mean. Getting
Yeah.
to the end of a book and they just don't tell you the ending.
Yes. Yes. Not
Rosebud
fair.
is a sled. I just ruined it. But so yeah, I really wanted to give practical tips and say
Yeah.
just read this, you'll be fine. It's like an instruction manual, and people find it very helpful, so it's good.
And then you also co-wrote All About Evie Into the
I
Oddity. So
did.
tell me, how did that come about? For anybody who doesn't
This
know, Evie Oddly was on RuPaul's Drag Race season 11
11, yes.
winner. So okay, how did that happen?
This was a COVID baby.
Okay.
We're in 2020, and I'm a huge RuPaul's Drag Race fan. Like unhealthy relationship with Drag Race. And I thought to myself, all these queens are stuck. They can't perform. They're not making money. And I thought, well, people are still reading books. So I reached out to Evie's agent, who I happen to know through a friend, and I pitched the idea. And lo and behold, it took us another 3 years to get through the process. So we were post COVID by the time it came out. But I had the opportunity to dive into Evie's life, and I spent about 30 hours interviewing Evie and interviewing Evie's family and friends, and wrote their biography for them. And I think of it kind of like I don't know how to put this, but I'm the narrator in the story. Like
Okay.
there's quotes from Evie or their friends and family, and then I kind of put the pieces together. And I think it's a good book. I'm very proud of it. It was a USA Today bestseller, so I think I did something right.
Well,
And
I'm
Evie,
excited.
I'm a
When I
huge
went on
Evie
to buy it,
fan.
I saw that I can get the autographed copy, and I was like,
You
"Ooh,
can, yes. Not
yes."
by I'm not autographing it, Evie. I
I
accept my
I
role
thought
in
that
this
for a minute. I thought
relationship.
like, "Oh, Michael will have signed this," and I thought, "No, that's not what this is."
No, I accept my role in the relationship. We actually did a book tour, and we would go to places, and my sole job well, two jobs was to interview Evie so that other people would hear what Evie had to say and carry Evie's stuff. And I fully accepted that was my role, and it was a great honor to be part of that journey. And Evie is a really interesting human being, and I think it's worth a read.
Yes, well, I cannot wait to read it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. All right, so for anybody who's watching or listening who would like to reach out to you, where can people find you and contact you?
It's very simple. My website is michaelbach.com, and on social media, I am at the Michael Bach on all the platforms.
All right, beautiful. We will make sure we share that. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. And I loved hearing your perspective on IDEA and what employers should be doing. And not just because it's the right thing, but it's the right thing for their business.
Exactly. Thanks so
Perfect.
much for including me.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Michael, hearing about some of the things that we're doing. And I have to admit that I definitely took the perspective of trying to make a moral argument, like, let's take care of people because it's the right thing to do. But it makes perfect sense to go after it from the business justification. I guess that's really what I do in my own work. I want to close the wage gap, but at the same time, it's making the case for paying more equitable wages in order to attract and retain employees who then create value for your organization. Anyway, as far as comments go, oh my God, Becky, look at that comment. One of the comments that I have gotten kind of a couple times and in different ways actually really ties into this. And that is that when we talk about a market rate for a job, that is not a living wage. And so I've gotten that as comments a couple times. And yes, you are exactly right. I do not disagree with you. Market rate is really what the data tells us that employers are having to pay in order to attract and retain somebody. But unfortunately, that does not align to a living wage, which is the money that somebody needs in order to sustain their lifestyle. I would love to see us move towards a country where if somebody is working 40 hours a week, that they make a living wage and that they can meet all of their basic needs. So to the people out there telling me they're two different things, you are exactly right. They are, and we have lots of work to do to move forward. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please like and subscribe and come back and see us again soon.
That's it for this episode of the Guerrilla HR Podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@guerrilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time,